You're asking me to go back 32 years now. I think one of the things I look back at is, and I'm really hard on myself. I
Mhm,
very rarely look back on achievements. I'm always looking forward at what's the
mhm,
next goal to achieve.
mhm,
And one of the things I look back on, although I loved my time at Eskdale, one of the things I look back on is, could I have done more? Could I have got more
mm.
out of it?
Yeah.
You know, and it's just little things like, should I have stuck to being the last person? Should I have gone up that hill with a bad leg and taken one for the team, even if it took us longer? And
Mm,
one of the things that I definitely reflected on early is, could I have done better? Could I have done more?
mm. Yeah.
So even though I had a fantastic time and I achieved loads of things I never thought I'd do, it reinforced into me that you can always do more and you can always be better. And because it was structured in a way that you got feedback on the events you'd done and things like that, it enabled you to look at it and go, yeah, actually, I haven't got an excuse of dyslexia, right? Okay, I can't learn a times table in the same way. This is just about mindset. A
Yeah.
lot of it, I think, Outward Bound is mindset. There's a bit of physical, you've got to be able to do certain stuff, but if you put your mind to stuff, you can do it. And I think I
Mm.
probably could have applied myself even more. And I think that's driven me in life to, I hate leaving anything on the table.
Ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to the latest episode of the Outward Bound alumni podcast, Outward Bound and me. You are very welcome. I'm your host, Dylan Carroll, and I'm joined today by a wonderful guest. He is a man who founded his own businesses, European medical journals and American medical journals. He's the winner of a Queen's Award, which was given to him for owning one of the 100 fastest growing businesses and best places to work. And he's also the owner and chairman of Chelmsford City Football Club. So I'm very pleased today to be joined by the trailblazing Spencer Gore. Hello, Spencer.
Hi, how you doing? Thanks for having me, and thanks for that lovely introduction.
You are very welcome. We're really pleased to have you as a guest, so thanks for coming today. So, Spencer, Eskdale, 1994. Do you have fun memories of your time at Outward Bound?
I do, yeah. The fading memories, 32 years ago or whatever it was. But yeah,
Uh-huh.
I absolutely love it. I absolutely loved it. And funny enough, my son, who's 17, nearly, well, 18 next week, is on a week's residential course, not an Outward Bound, but part of his gold Duke of Edinburgh. And he was really quite nervous about it last week and a bit wary about going. And I was telling him that I was doing this podcast. He said, "Why are you doing that?" I said, "Because it was a life-changing, opportunity for me, and I absolutely loved it. And you're going to love it." So yeah, I've got really fond memories of going up there. But like him, I was really nervous and
Mm,
wary about going beforehand. 3 weeks away from home. I'd never had 3 weeks away from home. So really great memories.
brilliant. And I think it's fascinating because when we've spoken before, and when I watch your own podcast, I should mention that you're a podcast host, so I'm on my guard, Spencer, and maybe it's different for you being the other side of the ropes today, but you don't come across as someone that isn't confident, but that might be for different reasons, and you've had success over the years. But could you talk to me about that confidence then? When you knew you were going to Outward Bound, maybe you could tell us how it came about. Was it part of your work or part of your study?
It was actually the local paper, the Essex Chronicle, was running a competition for worthy people, let's say. I can't
Uh-huh.
remember how they worded it, but for people that they thought would really benefit from going on the Outward Bound course. And I think they were offering a weekend, a week or 2 week courses. And it was sponsored by Barclays Bank. And
Ah,
my
okay.
parents actually saw it. And they, at the time, I'd struggled at school, let's say, with what I now know was dyslexia, but didn't know at the time. But I was always messing around. I was fidgety. I couldn't concentrate. And so I left school after a year of A levels.
Hmm.
And I worked for a year. I worked in a pub, as a kitchen assistant for 6 months. Then I worked as a post boy at an insurance broker's on the grand total of £4,500 a year.
Nice.
And I realised that if I wanted to progress in life, I needed to probably go back and get an education, or I
Hmm.
thought that's what I needed to do at the time. So I went back to Chelmsford College, started doing my A levels, and after a year of A levels, that's when this advert was in the Chronicle.
Hmm.
And so my parents convinced me, forced me to apply, and then you had to go and have an interview in the Shire Hall in Chelmsford, like in front of a panel. It was really intimidating. And so I did this process, and at the end of it, you had to go and wait outside to find out if you'd been successful or not. And they told me that they wanted to offer a 3-week one, even though that wasn't part of their plans originally, because they felt I'd really benefit from doing it. So, yeah, I was obviously happy that I'd got that. But I remember being not petrified, but really anxious about going up there, leaving all my mates for 3 weeks, going up to this place I didn't know of on my own. And I had to go and stay in London at my uncle's overnight, then get a train up, then get a coach, then get picked up. And it was, it was a big sort of adventure for me. And I remember walking in and just seeing I think there was 10 others in my group and thinking, bloody hell, I think I was the last one there. And it was like, they all know each other, they're all chatting away and just feeling really uncomfortable. And that lasted for about 6 hours. And then we were all really good mates and we were all having fun and we were doing team building stuff. And it was great fun. But it was really nerve-wracking to start with.
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear. So were you the only person that was travelling up from your area? So you didn't know the others at all until you got there?
No, none of us had met before. It was 11 individuals that had never met before. Talk about being out of your comfort zone. There was a real mix of people. I remember there were, we imaginatively called one of the guys from Newcastle Spuggy because Biker Grove was on telly at the time.
That's right.
We all had our nicknames within minutes of being there, and it was great. But we were all sorts of different backgrounds. There was one guy that had been in a young offenders prison. There was someone else that was joining the RAF. It was a real mixed bag of people for all on the same course for the same reason. It was people they felt would benefit from going on there.
Yeah, absolutely. And Spencer, what age were you when you went? I was working it out. I think you might have been a little bit older. Were you 18, 19?
I think I was 17.
Really?
But not 94. So no, you're right. I would have been just 19, maybe. Yeah.
So what was happening at the time? Were you in education at the time? Were you studying or were you working?
Yeah, no, I just finished my first year of A levels, resitting or not resitting, sitting them for the second time effectively, but I hadn't sat them. I'd only done a year the first time. I think just thinking about the ages there, I think I was probably, if not the youngest, certainly one of the youngest. There was probably a mix between sort of 18 to 23-year-olds there, so I was one of the younger ones. But I was just trying to do my A levels halfway through doing that.
Yeah. Just to take it a step back as well, Spencer, just to find out a little bit more about kind of where you grew up and what life was like at that time. Could you say a bit on that?
Yeah, of course. So I grew up in a little village just outside Chelmsford. Obviously got Chelmsford City shirt behind me now. But I grew up in a little village there. My parents were both from working class backgrounds. My mum grew up in Liverpool. My granddad worked on the docks there. My dad grew up early part of his life in Leeds, then London. And his dad, my granddad, worked on the railways. They were both the first ones in their family to go to university, and it was. I think it was a normal upbringing, but it's what you're used to, I guess. There was a lot of similar type, lower to middle class people at my junior school. I've got one sister 3 years older. She was what I call the class SWAT. She was good at everything, always behaved brilliantly, and I sort of came in, and you used the word trailblazed in behind her, causing havoc. So I had a lot to live up to. I put a lot of pressure on myself to meet those standards. And she happened to be really good at traditional education. She could remember her times table, her alphabet, and as she got older, all of those sort of things that are useful for exams. And I was useless at all those things. As part of my dyslexia assessment, I found out my short-term memory is in the bottom 1 percentile. So I couldn't do a times table. I couldn't do alphabets. I think anything like that. History, remembering dates, I was useless.
Yeah.
So I used to just mess around to distract from the fact that I wasn't very good at these things. And then I'd get kicked out of class or detention or whatever it might be. But pretty normal upbringing, I think.
Yeah, good. And listen, one of the things we champion the Outward Bound Trust and have always championed is understanding young people, what their quality worlds are like, what inspires them, where they do well. And maybe that was seen in you as well as part of the assessment for coming to Outward Bound. And not being typically academic or whatever the phrase is, you thrived in that space. So we've spoken a few times before, and you have mentioned funness about Eskdale. When you think back at your time there, Spencer, what are some of the memories that you've had, some of the activities that you did maybe?
I really did love it. We got into the habit as a family. I've got 3 kids, married with 3 kids now. We got into the habit of going up to the lakes pretty much every year for quite a long period of time. And I've been back to Eskdale a few times since then, just because of the fond memories, and my kids almost are bored of me talking about my time up there. But I remember the first afternoon, We all went out onto the sort of the green at the front of it, and we were doing the team building where you had to sit down without any equipment. So you have to get in a circle and all sit on each other's knees, and you can sit down and silly things like that. I remember vividly on the first morning we were made to get up, go for a run around the lake, rub down the jetty and jump in, and they then told us that was optional afterwards, and we did it every day because we enjoyed doing it and it made us feel part of a team. And I remember having 2 nights under a bit of tarpaulin when we were sent off on our own to look after ourselves. I don't even know if they do that anymore, but I literally had a sleeping bag, some food, a little stove, and a bit of tarpaulin, and I had to find sticks, build a little shelter. And the first night I built it behind a rock, thinking that would be out the wind, out the rain, and the rain came down the rock and straight over me, and I was dripping wet. But it's things like that you just. I talk all the time about. There's a phrase I love that I heard somewhere, I can't remember where, but nothing great's ever achieved in your comfort zone. And at Eskdale really pushed me out my comfort zone. There was. I managed to twist my ankle really badly and have a bad knee at the same time through 2 separate incidents when I was there. And they'd already strapped my ankle up, and we were going on a 2-day hike. And so they shaved my leg because they had to put so much tape on it. They then strapped my ankle up, strapped it down the sides, and strapped my knee up. And we were walking along up this hill, and this old couple walked past us, and there was 11 of us, and I was at the front. And one of the guys at the back overheard them saying, "Oh, isn't it inspiring seeing people like that with false limbs climbing up there?" And they, it was so shiny, it looked like I had a plastic leg. And they, but it's just those sort of memories that, it's 32 years ago, and it feels like yesterday. And we just had some really good times, good times. And there was other groups there as well at the same time. So there was probably, I don't know, maybe best part of 100 people there, I guess, or whatever it was. And we mixed with them on occasions as well. So it was meeting lots of really, really interesting people that I probably wouldn't have put myself in a position to meet if it hadn't have been in an environment like that.
Yeah, definitely. And over the years, we've spoken, in the times that we've had calls and stuff, you've always spoken about that, mixing with other people, mixing with the groups, being put into a place where you might necessarily not have been had it not been for Outward Bound. And I wanted to ask you about that because we found it, and you'd found it at the same time, actually, because I think you picked it up during one of your visits, the patrol report that had been written. And I just want to quote something, if that's okay, Spencer, from what was written. It said, "The course has helped us all to understand better our strengths and limitations, and we are leaving eager to put lessons learned from our Outward Bound experiences into practice in the outside world." So I think already then you were seeing that some of the aspects of the course that you could apply kind of later on in life were starting to come through. And knowing a little bit about you now, I can definitely see that you've put into practice loads of good stuff, and you've done really well in business and with Chelmsford as well. So we're going to dive into that. But I just wanted to ask, do you think that Outward Bound helped bring those traits out in you?
Yeah, I think definitely. That incident I was talking about with my leg.
Yeah,
we were on a 2-day, hike, march, whatever you want to call it. And at one point we had to go up a really big hill, stroke mountain, whatever you want to call it. And I just knew my knee and ankle weren't going to get me up there. So I said, look, I'll go this way, you guys go that way, because they wanted to complete it. And it caused a bit of a challenge for probably 10, 15 minutes where some people were, no, we want to go as a team. Some people wanted to carry on and go over there. Some people wanted me to try and get over there. But we all sat down and we debated it. And in the end, they all agreed that if I couldn't go, they wouldn't go. And we'd all go the same way together. And it was that taught me a lot about the humility of some people, about teamwork. And as I say, it's a business coach I work with once told me one of my strengths was I can get on with people of all different walks of life, whether we're just talking off air about billionaires or whether they're, whatever.
Yeah.
And I do feel quite comfortable talking to people like that. Yeah, I feel out my depth, I feel out my comfort zone sometimes. But I think meeting people from all walks of life, after we got back from Eskdale, we kept in touch for a while, and some of us met up and we went round to one of the guys' houses, that Rory's house that we'd had on the course. And he had a huge house, massive house. And I didn't necessarily know that at the time, but you could tell he was from a sort of different level to us. And as I said, there was people that had been in youth detention centres and stuff. So there was a real mixed bag.
Yeah.
But that was almost thrown out the window when we got there. We were all the same, as I said to you off air. Again, I name drop a lot because I take a lot of inspiration from people that have had success in life, because I look at everyone and think we're all pretty much the same deep down. We've all got two eyes, two ears, whatever it might be. No one's born with some superpower that enables them to achieve success that others don't. It's just a mindset and how you do it. And during that 3 week period, we all had the same mindset that we wanted to get on and achieve the task that we'd been set to achieve.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that mindset as well is, I've often heard other alumni talk about it was Outward Bound was a leveler. So it didn't really matter about your background. You were all in it together. And ultimately the success of the patrol or the success of the course was dependent on your ability to work together as well. So they're really good lessons for business as well.
Yeah, there was just, sorry, you just made me think there. Again, my wife said that my son had gone canyoning yesterday on his thing, and it reminded me of when we were at Eskdale. And we were doing the canyoning, going up, and we had to climb up the waterfall. And there was one bit where we went along, and you had to go underwater and through a hole in the rock and come out the other side. And we were told that there's one person at the front and one at the end, and you have to stay in that order, and you go through one at a time and they pull you through. And I was supposed to be the last person. And it got to me and a guy called Paul that I was really friendly with. And I was petrified because I'm quite a big guy. I got it into my head that I was going to get wedged in there. And if I was the last one, there'd be no one to help, push me through and whatever. And he being a team player, said, I'll go last. And so we did that, and I came through, and the instructor had a right go at me afterwards, because he said, if we'd have thought you were the last one and gone off, you might have left someone else. But it was a real leveler, and it taught me about working as a team and completing tasks as a team and helping each other out. And it wasn't like we're 11 individuals going to experience this course together. It was, we're a team and we do it together. And the fact that I got a bit of a rollicking for doing that was, it taught me a lesson, but it also taught me that help out other people if they need help, and go the extra mile to do those things. So there was so many learnings from it that it was great.
Good. One of the things you speak about on your podcast, Spencer, and all of the recording that you do around your work, and you just said, we spoke about it off air, it's about the type of people you surround yourself with. So you're the sum of all parts. So I know you've spoken to sort of prominent people in sport and industry on your podcast. Do you think, or what do you think was your main learning about yourself? If you reflect back on your time at Eskdale, maybe as soon as you left and you came back to Essex, did you feel maybe on the way home, I've learned that about myself? Or was it an immediate thing, or is it sort of played out over the years?
You're asking me to go back 32 years now. I think one of the things I look back at is, and I'm really hard on myself. I very rarely look back on achievements. I'm always looking forward to what's the next goal to achieve. And one of the things I look back on, although I loved my time at Eskdale, one of the things I look back on is, could I have done more? Could I have got more out of it? And it's just little things like, should I have stuck to being the last person? Should I have gone up that hill with a bad leg and taken one for the team, even if it took us longer? And it's one of the things that I definitely reflected on early is, could I have done better? Could I have done more? So even though I had a fantastic time and I achieved loads of things I never thought I'd do, it reinforcing to me that you can always do more and you can always be better. And because it was structured in a way that you got feedback on the events you'd done and things like that, it enabled you to look at it and go, actually, I haven't got an excuse of dyslexia, right? Okay, I can't learn a times table in the same way. This is just about mindset. A lot of it, I think, Outward Bound is mindset. There's a bit of physical, you've got to be able to do certain stuff, but if you put your mind to stuff, you can do it. And I think I probably could have applied myself even more. And I think that's driven me in life to, I hate leaving anything on the table.
Yeah. That definitely comes across with you. And fascinating to see, maybe, and again, I'm not trying to put words into your mouth, but when you reflect on it, maybe you could see that was the start of your entrepreneurialism. Maybe.
I think it certainly opened my eyes to, you don't have to do everything in the same old traditional way that's been done for 100 years. Everyone goes to school, you all do your exams, you all do. Well, actually, no, you can do different things. You do what you enjoy, do what you're good at. But also, I talk about this a lot. I hate the phrase work-life balance. because in my mind, that implies that you work 5 days a week to enjoy 2 days at the weekend, which for me, that's not balance. And that's just my interpretation. But my interpretation is enjoy 7 days a week. Find a job you love and you never work again. It's that quote. And I really enjoyed 3 weeks up at Outward Bound. And it's like, okay, I don't need to sit in a classroom and learn in a way that works for 95% of the people. I need to do what works for the 5% that I fit into. So I think it definitely helped me open my eyes to doing things differently.
Yeah, definitely. Right, let's go into what you did after Outward Bound. But before I do that, what's the story with you working in a bar and Ricky Gervais is there and someone from Coldplay is behind the bar?
So yeah, I did say I'll name drop, but yeah. So after Eskdale, I finished my A levels. I struggled with the second year a little bit because I tend to get bored of things quite quickly. I like variety. But I managed to get into UCL, which was the third best university in the country at the time. And while I was there, I worked at the University of London Student Union, and my boss was Ricky Gervais, and Will Champion, the drummer from Coldplay, worked behind the bar. So yeah, if you'd have told me at the time they'd have gone on to have that sort of success, I probably wouldn't have believed. Ricky was always a character, but it's amazing the achievements they've gone on to have.
Yeah, I think your achievements are equally as amazing, especially in business. So I'd love to go into that as well. I just wanted to talk to you a bit about success in business, Spencer, because one of the things you've also said is that to become the 1%, you have to do what the 99% aren't prepared to do. I wrote that down as a quote to ask your opinion on. Can you answer that now, but in the context of you've just said, maybe because of your dyslexia, maybe because of your alternative approach to education and understanding you had to work in a different way. Does that quote still ring true today?
Yeah, I think so. Probably even more so. It's someone worded it in a slightly different way. It's people that criticise you are often people that have given up on their own dreams. Mm-hmm. And again, it's that 99%. Everyone would like to win the lottery, to like to have this, to like to have that, until it comes down to actually doing the work that's involved. And I think it's not a skill set. Anyone's got different skills that can make them successful. It's have they got the resilience and the relentlessness to keep working? And that's the 99% of people don't. And they'll hit a challenge and they'll give up, or they hit a challenge, go again, then give up. And it's that resilience to hit a challenge, go again, hit a challenge, go again, hit a challenge, go again, and just be relentless with that. Yeah. And I think that's the real thing for me. It's not a skill. It's just relentlessness to want to achieve that.
I'd love to dig into that a bit more.
With the dyslexia thing, I think what gives me that relentlessness is if you're at school and you're doing reasonably well, you're sitting there getting a pat on the back every now and again. You're happy with that.
Yeah.
Most of the things I tried, I failed in many ways, and you get a chip on your shoulder. And then you're like, well, okay, well, when you find something you're good at, you're like, well, I'm going to prove that I am good at this, and I'm going to prove that I'm not the class clown, and I'm always messing around, and I'm in trouble. And the dyslexia is, Sir Richard Branson calls it a superpower, and I really believe it's a superpower in the sense that it makes you want to achieve more. If you look at the stats, something like 10% of the population is dyslexic. In the UK, 60% of the self-made millionaires are dyslexic. So it's massively disproportionate. And I think a lot of it's to do with that. One, you think differently. Two, you've probably got a bit of a chip on your shoulder, and that means you want to prove yourself. And then every time you fail, you're like, well, I'll work harder to prove myself. So I think a lot of it comes back to that as well.
Yeah. So on your podcast as well, you go into that in quite a lot of detail. So you talk about gold medal winning with your guests. So you talk about that with your inspirational guests that come from sport, business, tech, entrepreneurialism. And one of the things I've noticed you do, you talk about their journey to the top on the basis that there's like an element of failing and chip on your shoulder and perseverance and resilience. First part of the question, is there any other traits that you see in them, the people that you interview? And are there kind of common themes that you see in people that have done really well?
Yeah, I think big picture thinking is you've got to have a ridiculous, we call it the big, hairy, audacious goal. You've got to think big picture, because if you think you can, you possibly can. If you think you can't, you definitely won't. If you think you can't achieve something, you're not going to achieve it. I think we can get to the Premier League. Doesn't mean we'll achieve it, but if I don't think we'll get there, we'll definitely won't get there. So I think you've got to have big picture thinking. I think then you have that resilience to get there. And I think it's not only failing, it's wanting to fail. I talk to people, and when I was in the early days of setting up the business, we'd get things wrong and people say, well, you got that wrong. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to get 8 out of 10 things wrong. But the sooner I get those 8 wrong, the sooner I'll find the 1 or 2 that work. When I first started in sales, my boss used to say to me, we used to have to do 100 calls a day, and you'd get through to a few people. And when you got through to them, they'd probably say no. And he, every time you get a rejection, you put the phone down and he'd just say to me, 1 call closer. Because you've failed 99 times, but the one that succeeds gets you a big deal. We actually adopted that during COVID.
Yeah.
So, we didn't know when lockdown was going to finish, but we knew it was challenging. So I started doing these daily videos for the team because we'd always been office-based full time. And suddenly we've got the whole team working from home. So we just thought it'd be a nice thing just to reach out and have a silly little video or a inspiring video or a whatever video, a touch point. And I ended up signing them all off with 1 day closer because, and I think you could probably adopt that to 1 failure closer. It's the failure. People, you've got to celebrate failure, not hide it and be scared of it. And one of the most important questions we ask when we're interviewing people is, what's the biggest mistake you've made? And you can tell a lot by people that hesitate for a long time because they're almost scared to answer it because they think they're going to be seen as a failure. And it's like, no, I want people to embrace their failures, but not only embrace it, what did you then do to fix it so you didn't make that same mistake again twice? Because if you make it once, that's fine. We all make mistakes. If you start making it the same mistake repeatedly, that's just a habit then, and then that's not a good thing.
That's really good advice, Spencer. And I think, I don't know if you remember actually when we spoke a few years ago. So we were going through some change at work, and I was tasked with helping to create a culture document that was based on discussions and input from the team. And it's about how we work together as a team. And one of the things that came across really strongly was this, it was like you've just said, it was almost like this reticence to fail or not put yourself out there. And I think when you're dealing with people, and I'm just making this parallel now, because obviously we support young people as a charity, through the medical journals, you're educating professionals in that space. And if you don't see the big picture, and if you're not able to see the possible barriers in the road and the possible challenges, that's a really dangerous position to be in as well. So having a culture where you almost like facilitate the fact that making mistakes is okay, that's when you get people thinking a bit more laterally. And like you do, and I've seen it in the videos as well, having these big ambitious goals that, if they're not on the table, then they are never going to happen. So that's really good to hear.
Just on that, there's a good book by Matthew Said called Black Box Thinking. And it actually compares the medical industry or the healthcare industry with pilots. And if you're a pilot, hence why it's called black box thinking, but I can't remember exactly, so don't quote me on this, but I think if you make a mistake and report it within 24 hours, you can't get in trouble for it.
Okay.
Because that way it encourages you to report it early, and then you learn from those mistakes. Because if you're a pilot and you make a mistake, it can be incredibly costly. So they encourage you to report those mistakes and learn from those mistakes. So we introduced something at EMJ called the Will It. And it's named after the Ben Hunt Davis book, the Olympic gold medalist, Will It Make the Boat Go Faster?
Yeah.
And it's just focusing on things that will make the boat go faster. So if someone gets something wrong or there's something doesn't work quite right at EMJ, we're encouraged to write it in the Will It so other people can learn from that so we don't make the same mistakes again. So it's actually, as I say, celebrating mistakes and acknowledging that we all make mistakes and we're going to make mistakes. But actually the important bit is, do we learn from them? Or do we just try and hide it away so that, doctors have a habit of, not have a habit, but there can be a tendency not to report mistakes because you might get sued, particularly in the States and places like that. So it's that mindset shift.
Yeah. Spencer, will you tell us a little bit about EMJ Learning? Yeah,
so the business is set up to elevate the quality of healthcare globally. So it started off, I worked at publishers. They did a lot of healthcare, and I focused on the healthcare side of it. I then went to work at EMAP, which was a big provider. They organised some of the biggest exhibitions in the UK. And I saw a gap in the market that merged the two ideas. I then went back to the publisher to work there. And I pitched my idea to the CEO and then to the board of directors. And eventually they said, look, we're not looking for new ideas. And but they wound that business down a few years later, which is why they weren't looking for new ideas. But this was 2007, the financial crisis. We just had our first child, my daughter. We just bought a new house. I was earning six figures, and I thought, I'm going to give it a go. I figured it's such a bad time to do it. It's only going to get easier. Can't get any harder than doing it now. But I also had that mindset that if I do fail, I'm a good salesperson. I'll get another job. So it didn't seem like a big risk. But so I set up a business, ran that for about 4 years. I had a business partner that I'd worked with previously. We weren't aligned on our values. So he had all the skills to do the jobs, but he had a different outlook on life. And that really resonated with me when I was setting up EMJ, that I only want to work with people that are aligned with the way I see things. There's no right or wrong values. Your values are right for you. Mine are right for me. If they're not aligned, it's not going to work. If they are aligned, it probably will work. So I set up EMJ 2012. We've grown that from me and a couple of interns to 100 staff in London. We set up AMJ, which is the American Medical Journal, to do the same in the US.
Yep.
That's been going for 2 years. We've grown that to 9 staff out there now. It's grown very, very well in all aspects. We've struggled a little bit with some visa issues, but apart from that, it's been really good. Then we set up EMJ Learning in 2024 as well, which is an accreditation for doctors. So if you're a doctor, you have to get so many points every year, CME points. And so we provide CME accreditation. So yeah, that's the business.
Yeah, brilliant. I was looking at the Gore Group values. So we spoke about values, and we spoke about one of them being, one is to be gold medal winning. So you're inspiring your staff to be the best versions of themselves. And we spoke about that just a little while ago. And we've got this value at Outward Bound, the fifth value, around inclusion and individuality. It's just to make sure that everyone feels valued, welcomed, and is encouraged to be themselves. And I know you instill that in your staff, Spencer. I just see it, from your LinkedIn posts to your videos. Fun. How important is that in terms of culture and building teams?
It's the be all and end all for me. As I said before, it's work-life balance. I spend 7 days a week working because I really, really enjoy what I do. So it has to be fun. As I said, we were talking earlier, I had lunch with Barry Hearn on Monday, and he must have used the word fun 50 times in our lunch. Yeah. I think that's, if you're not enjoying things, there's only so long you can keep going before you just get fed up with it, or you can't keep going. And so we have our recruitment process, which is we have a 15 to 30 minute phone call just to make sure we're both aligned on what the job is and what they're applying for and if they've got the right sort of skill set. Then we do a competency interview, which is with someone that's going to be their line manager and someone that's going to be a peer, to make sure they've either got the skills or, more importantly, the ability to learn those skills, because we think we can train any of the skills that you need to work at EMJ or Gore Group. The third part is the values interview. It's not really an interview as such. It's a conversation where we ask a lot of repetitive questions from sort of schooling or your last level of education right the way through to your latest job. And we ask the repetitive questions because we're looking for patterns. Because if it's something you keep doing regularly, it's probably because you either believe in it or you don't believe in it. And therefore it's a value. And you can't change someone's values. They're ingrained in you for childhood. So that's the formal interview process. The fourth part of the process is, are they fun? It's an unofficial part. And the question we ask ourselves is, if you were sat next to them at the Christmas party, would your first reaction be, oh, God? Or would it be, oh, brilliant? Or if you're going on a business trip for a few days, same question. Now, that doesn't mean you're only trying to recruit people that are the same as you. Yep. It could be that someone that's really different to you, but they're really interesting and they've got stuff you want to learn about. And, you talk about diversity. I believe in cognitive diversity being equally, if not more important. You want people that think differently, otherwise you just get the same results all the time. So you're not looking for people that are just like you. You're looking for very different people, but they can still be interesting and fun. So I think that's it's not an official part, but it's a really important part of our recruitment process.
Yeah, and that plays into culture as well, doesn't it? And I think if you look at Barry Hearn, we were talking about boxing earlier, big boxing fans. The development of Matchroom, for example, has accelerated in the last few years, hasn't it? Obviously, there's been a bit of a cash injection from Saudi Arabia, but there's also been I see it in the mindset of working with other promoters, working in different locations and building up fighters and stables around certain locations. And that probably wasn't the strategy in previous years, but the ability to kind of think laterally and think bigger has enabled a culture of thinking more freely. And there's a direct line then into success and turnover and numbers and stadium fights and things like that. So, yeah, I think that all plays into it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's also that 20-year overnight success sort of story that people talk about. We suddenly, not suddenly, but we recently have had a lot more attention because you hit certain benchmarks, and then you start getting on the Times fast track and the Times best place to work and a Queen's Award, and all of a sudden people start taking notice of you. I got put on the Times 50 most ambitious leaders a few years ago, and they said to me, "Well, what suddenly made you ambitious?" And I said, "Nothing. You've only just now recognised it." And it is that we've been like this for years, but once it becomes in the spotlight a bit more, people start picking up on it. So I don't think Barry's massively changed on a lot of the stuff he does. It's just that you hit a certain point and then you get more and more attention. And he's that epitome of what we were talking about before with mindset. You see clips of him on social all the time with I'm unbeatable, and he truly believes that. He's not going to give up because he's had a setback. He's had hundreds of setbacks, but he just looks at them as opportunities to learn and thinks that he genuinely can achieve anything he wants to achieve. And likewise I do, which is sometimes it can be a weakness as well. But I genuinely believe if I put my mind to anything, I can achieve it.
Good. And so successful in business, and you made a decision recently to go full circle in life, back to Chelmsford. And we can see the away kit of your team behind you. But you then you became owner or majority owner and chairman of Chelmsford City Football Club. Spencer, how did that come about? And what are you doing buying a football club?
First of all, I didn't make a decision recently. Again, it was a big, hairy, audacious goal I set back in 2012. So again, it's having that big picture thinking. So I've mentioned my business coach that I have a few, but Andy Sleep. I started working with him. I met him at the football club. So go back a step, I guess. In 2007, when I set up my first business, I had a 6-month non-compete. So I couldn't do any of the healthcare stuff. So I went down to Chelmsford City, being my local football team, and said, "Look, can I help out?" And I ended up helping out there, doing some commercial stuff and whatever. And one of the things we did was to launch a networking club there. And I met this guy. I was grabbing a coffee because I'm not a big fan of networking in that sort of forced environment. But I was there because I'd helped launch it, so I had to be there. So I'm sort of hiding in the corner getting a coffee, and this guy comes up to me for the same reason. And he's like, "Hi, I'm Andy." And I said, "Hi, I'm Spencer." And he asked what I do. And I told him, and I said, "What do you do?" And he said, "I'm a business coach." I said, "What does a business coach do?" And he basically said, if you go to the gym, do you use a personal trainer? If you do, you probably work harder. He said, that's in a 2-minute version of what I do. And we ended up chatting for about 2 hours. And my then business partner, as I said, his values weren't aligned with me, but he didn't see the value in getting a business coach that didn't have healthcare experience. So he didn't want to work with him. But we kept in touch. When I set up EMJ in 2012, one of the first things I did was say, "Will you be my business coach?" And he said, "Yeah." And the very first session, he said to me, "I want you to go away and think of some answers before the first session to these questions." And one was, what are the 6 things that you're most proud of in your life? Why were they important to you, and how did they make you feel? And the second one was, if you won the lottery tonight, and it was topped up every single day, so you've done all your bucket list stuff, you've given money to charity, to your family, traveled the world, what gets you out of bed tomorrow? So I went to this first session, and I answered the lottery question. I said, I'm too old to be a professional player. We'll forget the fact I was never good enough. Therefore, I'm probably not going to be a professional manager, so I'd love to own a football club. And he said, "What, Liverpool?" Because he knew I was a Liverpool fan. And I said, "No, they're already pretty much at the pinnacle of football. You might get them 1 or 2 places higher depending on the season, or 1 or 2 places lower, but really you're only probably going to take them down." I said, "I'd love to take Chelmsford and take them to the next level." And so we agreed in that meeting that EMJ would become my vehicle to allow me to do that. So it was actually a long-term vision from 2012 to buy the club, and I tried a couple of times over the years. I ended up buying it in 2024 after quite a tricky process. But yeah, so that was the story behind buying the club.
Brilliant. And I love the fact that it's your your local club, and you've got big ambitions, and you've tied that into your businesses as well. That's really commendable, Spencer. I was going to ask you about Project X. Is that the thing that you set up in 2012? I've seen you write and speak about things online. You've spoken about Project X and Project Y. Does that tie into what you've just said, or are they separate big goals? Yeah.
No, a little bit. So we set the business up in 2012. Within a couple of years, people were asking us what our exit strategy was. I said, I haven't got an exit strategy. I've just set up a business because I've seen an opportunity. I want to keep growing the business. And I kept getting asked, and I felt almost embarrassed that most people seem to set up a business with an exit strategy. And I was like, oh, Christ, I'm doing things differently here. So I came up with the strategy that if someone asked what my exit plan was, I would say it's Project X. And what Project X was, it was that we would grow the business to a position where we could float on the stock exchange, we could sell to private equity, we could sell to trade, we could go down to being 1 day a month as a chairman, or we could keep working Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, because we enjoyed what we were doing. We could do any of those because the business was doing well enough that we could do that. But the plan was to achieve that by 2025. I knew that if I did that, it would give me enough money to go and buy the football club and take that. So we probably achieved all of that by 2024, if not a bit earlier. We got offered to float, we got offered to buy, blah, blah, blah. I had probably 6 months where I felt quite, not demotivated, but I was nowhere near as motivated as I had been. And I realised that I love working to goals. I love setting a big, hairy, audacious goal that I'm going to buy a football club, or I'm going to get that football club to the Premier League. And I'd achieved all those goals that I set. So we said, well, let's set some new goals. So we came up with the imaginatively titled Project Y, following on from Project X, but it was also a bit tongue-in-cheek as if to say, why are we still doing this? Yeah. We don't need to be doing this. Yeah. But Project Y was, we want to have a golden unicorn. So it's a term I've made up myself, because I know a few people that have had unicorn businesses, so billion-dollar businesses, and I want to do something differently. So we want to have a billion-dollar business that hasn't taken investment from anyone else. We want to have Chelmsford City in the Premier League. We want to be the go-to place for healthcare professionals. And we want to have a gold medal winning boxer that we've trained up from scratch. And we want to do all of that by 2038, which is the centenary year of the football club. So that's Project Y. That's what we're now working towards.
Brilliant. Well, I just wish you all the success with that. Community. How important is it to you, Spencer, in terms of business, in terms of football?
I think that's the key to all of it is, we're building a community of healthcare professionals at EMJ that will help elevate the quality of healthcare globally. We measure that all day, every day on our website through tracking it.
Yep.
And I'm trying to now build a community at the football club. I feel a duty to, rightly or wrongly, to put Chelmsford City on the map. I grew up there. It was really good for me. My dad was a county councillor when he ran his own business in there, helping the community. Much as I want to get Chelmsford City into the Premier League, I want to put Chelmsford on the map. I get a bit embarrassed when people don't know what Chelmsford. People say, "What team is that? Cheltenham, Chelsea." People have never heard of Chelmsford. If you ask anyone what Chelmsford's famous for, most people will say it's the birthplace of radio, if they know anything about Chelmsford. And a few people will say, "Oh, I remember the V festivals that used to be there."
Yep.
Apart from that, no one's ever talks about anything in Chelmsford. And I just find that a bit embarrassing that we're known as a commuter town. People go from Chelmsford to London.
Yeah.
And I want to be the place that brings people to Chelmsford. It's kind of cool that Chelmsford City Football Club was called Chelmsford City Football Club decades before Chelmsford became a city. It was a town. So it's almost like the football club manifested the city status. And so I want to utilise that and make Chelmsford a place that people want to come to, put it on the map. And the only way you can do that is by helping the community and making it a great place in the community.
Yeah, 100%. So your son's on expedition at the moment, and the chat that you had with him, or the finding out that he was doing that yesterday, and knowing that we were doing the pod today, maybe made you reflect back a few years. I won't mention how many. I won't mention that it was 32 years ago, Spencer. Although I think we're similar ages, so that's okay. But just as my final sort of question, when you reflect back, so you've had a phenomenal career, and I get a gut feeling that you're just getting started in many ways. And I really hope that all your plans for the medical journals and for Chelmsford City Football Club come to fruition. I would really love to see you have that success. But when you look back, and maybe if you were to talk to your son tonight on the phone, is there anything you'd say to him or anything you'd say to yourself that would give the rest of your life and career a bit more perspective?
I'd tell him to embrace it. Take the opportunity. Life is about taking opportunities. That's the difference between people that have success and people that don't have success. There's opportunities everywhere, but you've got to take those opportunities and you've got to embrace them. When I came back from Eskdale, for a couple of years, I seriously considered becoming an outdoor instructor because it really had that sort of impact on me. And you never know when the next opportunity is going to come around. And I say it quite often, if you don't ask, you don't get. Mm-hmm. And yeah, we were talking about Alfie Best earlier and the podcast I did with him. I met Barry Hearn through booking him as a speaker. I met Alfie I chartered his yacht last year. I could have just left both of those there and not sort of done anything with it. But I ended up reaching out to both of them and keeping in touch and building those relationships, embracing the fact that I'd got to meet them. Mm-hmm. And now, as I say, in the last 2 weeks, I've had lunch with Alfie and Barry, two billionaires, that I shouldn't be mixing with people like that. That's not the level I'm at. And it's, you become the average of the people you surround yourself by. Well, if I want to be at that level and I want to have success, not just financial success, but helping create gold medal winners, helping the football team get here, all of these things, it's embracing these opportunities and just saying, actually, I'll give it a go. What's the worst that can happen? I fail. Okay, so what? So I would just say to anyone, my son or anyone else, take opportunities. You never know what they'll lead to. Just ask. Just try.
Great advice. I'm glad you've heeded your own advice, Spencer. Really proud to have you as part of our alumni. And, you've been very kind to me over the years when we've spoken and, I've asked you for some advice and you've also been very generous in your support. And listen, I just wish you all the very best. Keep going, keep with that success. I hope your son has a fantastic time on expedition. And I hope you continue to stay in touch with Outward Bound and continue to look fondly back on your time at Eskdale in 1994.
Oh, thank you for having me on. I love doing it because all those things we just talked about, I forget to do myself sometimes. And then you do things like this and it drills you into your mindset and say, actually take those opportunities, do these things. So it's been an absolute pleasure. And thank you to all the work you do at Outward Bound and to Outward Bound for all the great work it does.
Yeah, good man. Thank you, Spencer.
Cheers.